The thing about discovering your wife's affair is that it doesn't happen like in the movies. There's no dramatic music, no slow-motion realization, no perfectly timed confrontation. Instead, you're standing in your own garage at your annual Halloween party, watching your wife of 12 years straddle another man like she's claiming territory, and all you can think is, at least she didn't get motor oil on her costume. My name is Ethan Garvey, and I'm apparently the kind of man who makes jokes when his world collapses. Occupational hazard of being a logistics manager, I suppose. When everything goes wrong, you find the humor in the chaos, or you lose your mind entirely. Oh, Ethan. Tessa's voice cut through my internal commentary like a rusty blade. She didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed as she climbed off Dean Pritchard, my former friend and her supposed business partner. This isn't what it looks like. I leaned against the doorframe, still holding 2 beers I'd brought out for the guys. Really? Because it looks like you're auditioning for a position that's already been filled. By me. For 12 years. Dean, all 41 years of his gym-obsessed, protein shake-drinking mediocrity, had the nerve to smirk. Come on, man. We're all adults here. Adults. I nodded slowly, setting the beers down on my workbench. You know what adults do, Dean? They don't screw their business partner's husband in his own garage during a neighborhood party. Ethan, please. Tessa smoothed down her witch costume, how fitting, and tried to look contrite. Can we talk about this inside? People will hear. That's when it hit me. Not the betrayal. I'd suspected that for weeks. Not even the humiliation of catching them in my own space. What hit me was the casual way she said it. People will hear. Not, I'm sorry. Not, this was a mistake. Just concern about appearances. I've always been good at reading situations. It's what makes me valuable at work, anticipating problems before they derail entire shipping operations. And right now, I could see exactly how this would play out if I followed the expected script. Tessa would cry, promise it meant nothing, beg for forgiveness. Dean would slink away like the coward he was. I'd be expected to either forgive her or storm out in a rage, probably after throwing a punch that would land me in legal trouble. Instead, I smiled. You're absolutely right, Tessa. People might hear. We should definitely keep this between us. The confusion on both their faces was almost worth the price of admission. I'll just head back to the party, I continued, grabbing the beers again. Kevin was asking about you, Dean. Something about whether you'd finished installing that new sound system in your apartment. You know, the one with the thin walls that shares a bedroom with Mrs. Patterson next door. Dean's face went pale. Mrs. Patterson was the neighborhood gossip queen and a member of the Homeowners Association board. Ethan, what are you? Tessa started. Enjoying the party, I finished, just like you two were. See you inside. I walked back toward the house, leaving them scrambling to figure out what I meant. The truth was, I'd been tracking Dean's renovation permits for weeks, ever since I'd started suspecting something was going on. Amazing what public records can tell you when you know where to look. The party was in full swing when I returned. Our living room was packed with neighbors, co-workers, and friends, or people I'd thought were friends. Megan Walsh, Tessa's best friend and enabler, was holding court near the punch bowl, regaling a small crowd with some story that involved dramatic hand gestures and her signature laugh that sounded like a car engine trying to turn over. There you are. She spotted me immediately. Where's Tessa? And Dean? I thought you went to find them. They're having a deep conversation about business partnerships, I said, handing her one of the beers. You know how passionate Tessa gets about her work. Megan's eyes lit up with something that might have been genuine interest or might have been the 3 glasses of wine she'd already consumed. Oh, absolutely. She was just telling me yesterday how much more fulfilling her new projects have been. Really gets her heart racing, you know? I nearly choked on my own beer. I'm sure it does. She's so lucky to have found someone who really understands her needs, Megan continued, apparently oblivious to the double meaning in her own words. I mean, Dean just gets her in a way that's so rare. Rare indeed. I spotted Kevin Martinez across the room and excused myself before I said something I'd regret. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Kevin was the one genuine friend I had left in this neighborhood, a software engineer who'd moved in 3 years ago with his husband and immediately become the most normal person on the block. He was dressed as a vampire, complete with plastic fangs that made him lisp slightly. "Having fun yet?" he asked as I approached. "Oh, you know me. I live for social gatherings where I get to watch people pretend to like each other." Kevin studied my face with the kind of attention that made me remember why I trusted him. "Everything okay? You look like someone who just discovered their favorite restaurant has been serving them dog food for a year." Interesting analogy. I glanced toward the back door where Tessa and Dean had just emerged, both looking slightly disheveled and overly casual. "Tell me, Kevin, as a neutral observer, what's your take on Tessa's business partnership with Dean?" Kevin followed my gaze and watched as Dean immediately went to the bar while Tessa made a beeline for Megan. "You want my honest opinion?" "Always. I think Tessa's been getting some very personal consulting services, and I think Dean's been billing her in ways that don't show up on any invoice." I nodded slowly. "That's what I figured." "The question is," Kevin continued, lowering his voice, "what are you going to do about it?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What was Ethan Garvey, mild-mannered logistics manager and apparently naive husband, going to do about discovering his wife's affair? The old Ethan, the one who'd existed until about 20 minutes ago, would have confronted them publicly, made a scene, probably said things he'd regret later. The old Ethan believed in fair play, in giving people the benefit of the doubt, in working through problems with honest communication. But the old Ethan was gone, left behind in that garage along with my illusions about my marriage. The new Ethan understood something fundamental. This wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a war to be won. "I'm going to be very strategic about it," I told Kevin. "Strategic how?" I watched Tessa laugh at something one of our neighbors said, watched her play the role of devoted wife and gracious hostess. She was good at it, I had to admit. 12 years of practice had made her an expert at the performance. "You know what I do for a living, Kevin. I solve problems. Complex problems with multiple moving parts and lots of potential failure points. The key is understanding the system before you try to change it." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "And what system are we talking about here?" "The ecosystem that supports Tessa's behavior. The friends who enable her, the social structure that protects her, the financial arrangements that make her comfortable. All of it." "That sounds thorough," I suggested. I was going to say scary, but thorough works too. I clinked my beer against his. Here's to being thorough. The rest of the party passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I played my role perfectly: attentive husband, gracious host, friendly neighbor. I made small talk with people whose opinions of me would matter very soon. I listened to conversations with new ears, cataloging information that might prove useful later. Around midnight, after the last guests had stumbled home and we'd finished the basic cleanup, Tessa finally brought up what had happened in the garage. "Ethan, we need to talk." I was loading the dishwasher, focusing on the methodical placement of plates and glasses. "About what?" "You know about what." I looked up at her, this woman I'd shared a home and a life with for over a decade. She was still beautiful, still had that smile that had first caught my attention at a college party all those years ago. But now I could see the calculation behind it, the way she was measuring her words and planning her approach. "Do we?" I asked. because it seemed like you and Dean were handling whatever needed to be discussed. She sat down at the kitchen island, adopting what I recognized as her serious conversation posture. What you saw tonight, it's not what you think. What I think, I said carefully, is that you were having what appeared to be an intimate moment with your business partner in our garage during our Halloween party. Am I wrong about any of those facts? The facts are right, but the context, I interrupted, is that you're my wife. Or at least, you were the last time I checked. Tessa's composure cracked slightly. Were? I closed the dishwasher and turned to face her fully. That's really going to depend on what you say next, isn't it? For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. I could see her weighing her options, calculating the risks and benefits of honesty versus continued deception. It was fascinating to watch, like seeing the gears turn in a particularly complex machine. Finally, she chose deception. Ethan, I love you. What happened tonight was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Dean and I have been working so closely together, and there's been some tension, and tonight with the wine and the party atmosphere. She reached across the counter toward me. It didn't mean anything. I looked at her outstretched hand but didn't take it. A moment of weakness. Exactly. Caused by wine and party atmosphere. Yes. And working closely together. Right. I nodded thoughtfully. So this was the first time anything like this has happened between you two? Absolutely. And it won't happen again. Never. Because it didn't mean anything. Nothing at all. I smiled at her, and for a second, hope flickered in her eyes. Tessa, I said gently, I've been managing logistics for 15 years. Do you know what the most important skill in my job is? She looked confused by the change in direction. Organization? Pattern recognition. The ability to look at a complex system and identify the recurring problems, the weak points, the places where failure is most likely to occur. I leaned against the counter, keeping my voice conversational. For instance, if I see a shipping route that's been delayed 3 times in the past month, always on Tuesdays, always at the same checkpoint, I don't assume it's a coincidence. I investigate. Ethan, I don't understand what... Your new workout schedule started 6 weeks ago. Every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes Saturdays. Always at Dean's gym, never at the community center where you used to go. Your phone habits changed around the same time. More texting, more privacy, new passwords on everything. You bought new underwear, started wearing perfume to business meetings, and last week I found a receipt for a hotel restaurant in your purse. A hotel restaurant where you supposedly never went. The color drained from her face. So, when you tell me tonight was a moment of weakness caused by wine and party atmosphere, what I hear is the sound of someone who thinks I'm stupid enough to believe that pattern recognition doesn't apply to my own marriage. Tessa stood up abruptly, and I saw a flash of something in her expression that I'd never seen before. Not guilt or shame, but anger, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Fine, she said, her voice sharp. You want the truth? Here's the truth. Yes, Dean and I have been seeing each other. Yes, it's been going on for weeks, and yes, it means something. There we go, I said calmly. Now we're getting somewhere. You want to know why? She was building up steam now, and I could see years of resentment starting to pour out. Because Dean makes me feel like a woman. He's passionate, he's decisive, he takes what he wants instead of analyzing everything to pieces. When I'm with him, I don't have to listen to endless discussions about logistics and systems and pattern recognition. He just acts. I nodded as if she was giving me useful information, which, in a way, she was. And another thing, she continued, I'm tired of being married to someone who treats everything like a problem to be solved. Sometimes life isn't about spreadsheets and efficiency reports, Ethan. Sometimes it's about feeling something real. Feeling something real, I repeated. With Dean. Yes, with Dean. He doesn't overthink everything. He doesn't turn every conversation into an analysis session. He's a real man who knows what he wants. And what he wants is you. What he wants is a woman who isn't afraid to be emotional, who doesn't have to justify every feeling with data and logic. She was really warming up now. Do you know what your problem is, Ethan? You're too emotional for a man. All this analyzing and processing and discussing feelings, it's exhausting. Dean doesn't need to talk everything through. He just takes charge. I absorbed this information like a computer processing new data. Too emotional for a man. Interesting perspective. So what happens now? I asked. Now we figure out how to move forward. I'm not saying I want a separation, but things need to change. I need space to figure out what I want, and you need to accept that I might need different things than what you've been providing. Different things. Like Dean. Like someone who doesn't treat me like a logistics problem to be optimized. I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, though she didn't know it yet, and felt something click into place, a kind of clarity I'd never experienced before. You know what, Tessa? You're absolutely right. She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. I have been treating this like a problem to be solved, but here's what I just realized. I've been trying to solve the wrong problem. What do you mean? I thought the problem was how to save our marriage, but the real problem is how to end it as efficiently as possible. Before she could respond, I headed toward the stairs. Where are you going? To bed. It's been a long night, and I have a lot of planning to do. Planning for what? I paused at the bottom of the staircase and looked back at her. You said I'm too analytical, too focused on systems and logistics. You're probably right. But here's the thing about being analytical, Tessa. It makes you very good at dismantling complex structures. Ethan, what are you talking about? Good night, Tessa. Enjoy your space to figure things out. I have a feeling you're going to get more of it than you bargained for. I left her standing in the kitchen, confusion written across her face. She'd wanted honesty? She was about to get more honesty than she could handle. But first, I needed to do what I did best. Analyze the system, identify the weak points, and plan the most efficient way to bring it all down. The old Ethan would have spent the night agonizing over what to do next. The new Ethan spent it making lists. I woke up at 5:30 the next morning with the kind of mental clarity that usually only came after solving a particularly complex shipping crisis. Tessa was still asleep beside me, looking peaceful and innocent, a masterclass in cognitive dissonance if I'd ever seen one. I slipped out of bed and made my way to my home office, a converted spare bedroom that Tessa had always complained was too cluttered. She was right, of course. It was filled with filing cabinets, reference books, and 3 different computer monitors that I used for tracking shipments across multiple time zones. But clutter, I'd learned, was just another word for comprehensive information management. I opened a new spreadsheet and titled it Project Autumn. Tessa had always mocked my tendency to organize everything into spreadsheets, but they'd served me well in my career. Why should my personal life be any different? The first column, assets. The second, liabilities. The third, dependencies. The fourth, vulnerabilities. Under assets, I listed everything that belonged to me, legally and practically. The house was in both our names, but I'd paid the down payment from my inheritance when my father passed away 5 years ago. The cars, my practical Honda was mine, her flashy BMW was technically ours, but she'd chosen it and made the payments. Bank accounts, retirement funds, the life insurance policies we'd set up when the kids were born. Wait. The kids. I sat back in my chair and felt the first real pang of emotion since the garage incident. Emma was 16, old enough to understand what was happening, but young enough to be genuinely hurt by it. Jake was 13, right at that age where everything felt like the end of the world anyway. This was going to be complicated. I added a new column, collateral damage. Then I made myself continue. Under liabilities, I started with the obvious, joint debts, the mortgage, credit cards. But as I dug deeper into our financial records, something I'd been meaning to do for months, I found some interesting surprises. Tessa had opened 3 new credit cards in the past 6 months. Cards I didn't know about, with balances that made my stomach clench. Nearly $15,000 in debt for what appeared to be clothes, restaurants, and hotel stays. Hotel stays that coincided perfectly with her business meetings with Dean. I cross-referenced the dates with my own calendar and found another pattern. Every time I'd been out of town for work, which happened about once a month, Tessa had charged something to these secret cards, usually dinner for 2 at expensive restaurants, sometimes hotel rooms in the city. She'd been financing her affair with credit cards, and since we were married, I was legally responsible for half of it. I made a note to call our lawyer on Monday. Under dependencies, I mapped out Tessa's support network. Megan Walsh, her best friend and primary enabler. Lana Rodriguez, her workout partner and secondary enabler. Randy Peterson, Dean's best friend and wingman. Dean's gym, where they'd apparently been conducting most of their business. The various neighborhood social groups where Tessa had built her reputation as the perfect wife and mother. And then there was Dean himself. 41 years old, never married, owned a small gym that was perpetually on the verge of bankruptcy, drove a Mustang that was worth more than his annual income, lived in a rented apartment with thin walls and a nosy neighbor. I opened a new browser window and started researching. Property records, business licenses, court filings. Amazing what you could find with a little patience and the right search terms. Dean's gym had been cited 3 times in the past year for health code violations. His business license was up for renewal in 2 months. His lease was month to month, which meant his landlord could evict him with 30 days' notice. And according to the county clerk's website, he'd been sued twice in the past 3 years by former business partners. Under vulnerabilities, I started connecting the dots. Tessa's entire social identity was built on being the perfect wife and mother. She was the one who organized the neighborhood book club, planned the annual block party, and managed the school fundraising committee. Her reputation was everything to her. Dean's business was hanging by a thread, and his personal life was a series of failed relationships and questionable decisions. He was the kind of man who looked good on the surface but couldn't handle real scrutiny. Megan and Lana were gossips who would turn on anyone if it served their social interests. Randy was loyal to Dean, but only as long as Dean was winning. And all of them had secrets they wouldn't want exposed. I spent the next 2 hours building a comprehensive profile of everyone in Tessa's orbit. Social media posts, public records, neighborhood gossip I'd overheard at various parties. By 7:30, I had a complete map of the ecosystem that supported my wife's betrayal. The question was, how to dismantle it systematically. "You're up early." I turned to find Tessa standing in the doorway, wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas last year. She looked uncertain, probably wondering if I'd spent the night planning some kind of dramatic confrontation. "Couldn't sleep," I said, minimizing the spreadsheet. "Too much to think about." She came into the room and perched on the edge of the desk, a gesture that would have seemed intimate yesterday, but now felt like a negotiation tactic. "Ethan, about last night." "What about it?" I may have said some things that came out wrong. I was upset, and when I'm upset, I don't always express myself clearly. I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. "Which part came out wrong? The part where you've been having an affair for 6 weeks, or the part where you think I'm too emotional for a man?" She flinched. "The emotional part, that was harsh. But accurate? I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "How did you mean it?" She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how to reframe her position without actually taking it back. "I meant that sometimes I need someone who's more spontaneous, more willing to just act on impulse instead of thinking everything through. Someone like Dean. Dean is he's different from you." "In what ways?" "Ethan, do we have to dissect this? Can't we just agree that we both made mistakes and try to move forward? What mistakes did I make? Another long pause. You've been distant lately, focused on work, not really present in our relationship. A woman has needs, Ethan. And those needs include straddling other men in our garage? That's not fair. You're right, I said. It's not fair. It's accurate, but it's not fair. She stood up abruptly. I'm trying to have a mature conversation about our relationship, and you're just throwing last night in my face. I'm trying to understand the logic. You felt distant from me, so you decided to get closer to Dean. You felt I wasn't meeting your needs, so you found someone who would. You felt I was too emotional, so you chose someone more, what was the word? Spontaneous. Yes. And now you want to move forward. I want to try to save our marriage. While continuing to see Dean? She hesitated just long enough to give me my answer. I need time to sort out my feelings. Time to choose between us. Time to figure out what I want. I nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. Hope flickered in her eyes again. Really? Absolutely. Take all the time you need. And you'll be patient while I work through this? Tessa, I'm going to give you exactly what you asked for. Space to figure out what you want, freedom to explore your options, and a chance to see what life looks like with different choices. She smiled for the first time since entering the room. Thank you. I know this is hard for you, but I think if we're both honest about what we need, I'm going to be very honest, I assured her, starting immediately. What do you mean? I mean, I'm done pretending that any of this is acceptable. I'm done enabling your behavior, financing your affair, and protecting you from the consequences of your choices. The smile disappeared. Ethan, you want space? You've got it. You want to see what life looks like with Dean? Perfect. But you're going to do it without my financial support, without my social protection, and without the safety net of our marriage. You can't just... Actually, I can. And I will. Systematically, thoroughly, and with the kind of attention to detail that you've always found so annoying. I turned back to my computer and reopened the spreadsheet. What is that? She demanded. Project management. You know how I am with complex problems. She leaned over my shoulder to look at the screen, and I watched her face change as she read the column headers. You're making a spreadsheet about our marriage? About the end of our marriage. I want to make sure I don't miss anything important. This is insane, Ethan. You can't just organize your way through a relationship crisis. Watch me. She stared at the screen for another moment, then straightened up. Fine. If that's how you want to handle this, go ahead. Make your lists and your charts and your plans, but don't expect me to participate in your little project. I don't expect you to participate. I expect you to experience the results. What's that supposed to mean? I looked up at her, this woman who'd shared my bed for 12 years, and apparently thought I was too stupid to notice her betrayal, too weak to respond to it, and too emotional to handle it properly. It means you're about to find out what happens when someone who's really good at logistics decides to optimize you out of their life. She left the room without another word, but I could hear her on the phone within minutes. Probably calling Megan, or maybe Dean. Definitely someone who would tell her that I was just hurt and angry, that I'd calm down in a few days, that everything would go back to normal once I'd had time to process. They were wrong, of course, but they'd figure that out soon enough. I spent the rest of the morning refining my strategy. The key to any successful logistics operation was timing. Move too fast, and you create chaos that works against you. Move too slow, and your opposition has time to adapt and counter your moves. The perfect approach was systematic pressure applied at precisely the right intervals to maximize disruption while minimizing your own exposure. By noon, I had a timeline. Phase 1 would begin immediately and focus on information gathering and asset protection. Phase 2 would start the following week with targeted social pressure. Phase 3 would be the public revelation, timed for maximum impact. and Phase 4. Phase 4 would be Tessa's complete social and financial isolation, followed by my clean exit from the entire situation. It was going to be beautiful. Monday morning brought the kind of crisp October air that made everything seem possible. I'd always loved this time of year, the way the light changed, the way people seemed to wake up from the lazy haze of summer and remember they had lives to live. This Monday felt different, though. This Monday felt like the beginning of something. I was at my desk by 7:30, coffee in hand, ready to begin Phase 1 of Project Autumn. My first call was to Janet Morrison, the family attorney who'd handled our wills and the house purchase. "Ethan, how are you? How's Tessa?" "That's actually why I'm calling, Janet. We're having some marital difficulties, and I need to understand my legal position." The warmth in her voice shifted to professional concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. What kind of difficulties are we talking about?" "The kind that involve infidelity and secret credit card accounts." "Ah, that kind. How much do you know about your financial situation?" "More than I did last week. Tessa's accumulated about $15,000 in debt that I wasn't aware of. Credit cards in her name. But since we're married in Ohio..." "You're potentially liable for half, yes. Have you confronted her about this?" "We've discussed the relationship issues. The financial issues are still being investigated." "Smart man. What else do you need to know?" I spent 20 minutes getting a crash course in Ohio divorce law, asset protection, and evidence gathering. Janet was thorough, practical, and completely unsentimental, exactly what I needed. "The most important thing," she concluded, "is documentation. Financial records, communication records, anything that establishes a pattern of deceptive behavior. And Ethan?" "Yes?" "Don't do anything stupid. Don't hack her email, don't follow her around, don't confront the other party. Just document what you can legally document and let the system work." "Understood." My second call was to my bank. I wanted to understand exactly how much exposure I had and what my options were for protecting my assets. The conversation was enlightening. Apparently, I could remove myself from any joint credit accounts with 30 days' notice. I could also freeze joint accounts if I suspected fraudulent activity, which, given that Tessa had been using our shared resources to finance her affair, wasn't much of a stretch. I didn't take any action yet, but I made notes. My third call was to Kevin. "How was the rest of your weekend?" he asked. "Educational. Are you free for lunch today?" "Sure. Everything okay?" "Define okay." "Fair enough. Noon at Murphy's?" Murphy's Pub was a local institution, the kind of place where you could have a private conversation without worrying about neighborhood gossip overhearing. Kevin was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a beer and a concerned expression. "You look like someone who's made a decision," he said as I sat down. "Several decisions, actually." I filled him in on Friday night's confrontation and Saturday morning's revelations. Kevin listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow, but mostly just processing. "So she wants time to choose between you and Dean," he said when I finished. "That's her position, yes." "And your position is?" "That she already chose. I'm just making sure she gets to live with the consequences." Kevin took a long pull from his beer. "What kind of consequences are we talking about?" "The kind that come naturally when someone's entire social and financial structure is built on a lie." "Ethan, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go down this road? I mean, I get that you're angry and you have every right to be. But once you start this kind of thing, it's hard to stop." "Kevin, let me ask you something. If someone at your company was embezzling money and lying to clients, what would you do? Report them to management and let the system handle it." "Exactly. You wouldn't ignore it, you wouldn't try to work it out privately, and you wouldn't worry about their feelings. You'd expose the problem and let the consequences follow naturally. But this is your wife, not a coworker. Is it? Because right now, Tessa feels more like a hostile business partner who's been cooking the books." Kevin studied my face for a long moment. "You're really done with her, aren't you?" I'm done with the version of her that I thought I was married to. The real version, the one who's been lying and cheating and spending money on her affair, that person was never my wife. She was just someone wearing my wife's face. That's either very healthy or completely terrifying. I can't decide which. Why can't it be both? We ordered lunch and spent the next hour talking through my strategy. Kevin asked good questions, pointed out potential problems, and helped me refine the timeline. He also volunteered to be my unofficial intelligence source for neighborhood gossip. Megan's been telling everyone that you and Tessa are going through a rough patch, he reported. She's painting it as a midlife crisis thing. You're being controlling and demanding. Tessa's just trying to find herself. Interesting narrative. Lana's been more direct. She told my neighbor that Tessa deserves better than someone who treats her like a business transaction. Also interesting. And Dean's been bragging at the gym about his new situation with a married woman. Apparently, he thinks it makes him look sophisticated. That's going to age poorly. After lunch, I spent the afternoon at work actually working. It felt good to focus on problems that had clear solutions, to deal with people who said what they meant and meant what they said. My assistant, Carol, noticed my improved mood. "You seem energetic today," she observed while delivering a stack of shipping reports. "I'm working on a new project, complex logistics problem with a lot of moving parts. Sounds challenging. The best kind." That evening, I implemented the first phase of my information-gathering strategy. While Tessa was at her book club meeting, or what she claimed was her book club meeting, I did a thorough audit of our shared computer. I wasn't looking for private emails or personal messages. Janet had been clear about the legal boundaries, and I had no interest in crossing them. But I was looking for financial records, account information, and any documentation that might be relevant to our impending divorce. What I found was better than I'd hoped. Tessa had been careless with her digital security. Browser history showed frequent visits to hotel websites, restaurant reservation systems, and online shopping sites. More importantly, she'd saved passwords for the credit card accounts I hadn't known about. I didn't access the accounts, that would have been illegal, but I did document their existence, along with the associated email addresses and phone numbers. Information that would be very useful when Janet started the formal discovery process. I also found something else, a folder full of screenshots and saved images from social media. Pictures of Dean at the gym, at restaurants, at various social events. Pictures that Tessa had been collecting and saving like some kind of digital scrapbook. The most interesting discovery was a document titled New Life Plan. It was a rough outline of what appeared to be Tessa's fantasy future with Dean. Moving in together, combining their businesses, traveling to places we'd never been able to afford. The financial projections were laughably optimistic. Apparently, Tessa thought Dean's struggling gym was going to become a fitness empire, and her social media consulting was going to turn into a marketing dynasty. The numbers didn't add up to anything resembling reality, but they painted a clear picture of what she was hoping for. I printed everything and filed it in a folder marked Documentation. Then I cleared the browser history and made sure everything looked exactly as I'd found it. By the time Tessa got home at 10:30, I was in bed reading a logistics management textbook. She slipped in quietly, probably hoping to avoid another confrontation. "How was book club?" I asked, without looking up from my book. "Fine. We're reading that new thriller everyone's talking about." "The one about the husband who finds out his wife is having an affair?" She went very still. "What?" "Gone Girl. That's the thriller everyone's been talking about, right?" "Oh, no, we're reading something else. A romance novel." "Ah. Well, I hope it has a happy ending." She didn't respond, just went into the bathroom to get ready for bed. But I could hear her making a phone call in there, her voice low and urgent. Probably checking in with Dean, or maybe getting advice from Megan about how to handle her increasingly unpredictable husband. Let them plan. Let them strategize and worry and try to figure out what I was thinking. The beauty of a good logistics operation was that by the time your opposition realized what was happening, it was already too late to stop it. Phase 1 was complete. I had comprehensive intelligence about Tessa's financial situation, her support network, and her future plans. I understood the ecosystem that was enabling her behavior, and I'd identified the pressure points that would bring it all down. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow with a simple phone call that would start the dominoes falling. I fell asleep that night feeling better than I had in months. There's something deeply satisfying about having a plan, about knowing exactly what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. Tessa tossed and turned beside me, probably wrestling with guilt or anxiety or whatever emotions people feel when they're living double lives. But her emotional state was no longer my problem. My only problem was executing Project Autumn with the precision and efficiency that had made me successful in my career, and I was very, very good at my job. Tuesday morning started with an interesting phone call. I was having coffee and reviewing shipping schedules when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Ethan Garvey. Mr. Garvey, this is Patricia Chen from Midwest Credit Solutions. I'm calling about some accounts that may be associated with your address. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. What kind of accounts? Credit card accounts with significant balances. Our system shows that you may be an authorized user or joint account holder. I'm not an authorized user on any accounts I didn't personally open. What's the nature of your call? Well, sir, we're trying to reach Teresa Garvey about some overdue payments, and your number was listed as an emergency contact. Overdue payments. That was new information. I see. And how overdue are we talking about? I can't discuss specific account details with you unless you're an authorized user, but I can tell you that we've been trying to reach Mrs. Garvey for several weeks. Several weeks. And what happens if you can't reach her? Eventually, we'd have to explore other collection options. Since you're married, you may have some legal responsibility for the debt. I thanked Patricia and hung up, then immediately called Janet. It's getting worse, I told her. She's apparently behind on payments for the secret credit cards. How far behind? The collection agency wouldn't say, but they've been trying to reach her for weeks. Ethan, you need to protect yourself immediately. If she defaults on those cards, they can come after your assets. What do you recommend? Document everything, separate your finances as much as legally possible, and consider filing for divorce sooner rather than later. The longer you wait, the more liability you're going to accumulate. After I hung up with Janet, I sat in my kitchen and thought about timing. I'd been planning to let this play out slowly, to give Tessa enough rope to hang herself socially before I pulled the financial rug out from under her. But if she was already in default on her secret accounts, I needed to accelerate the timeline. I called my bank and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Then I called work and told them I needed to leave early for a family emergency, which, technically, was true. At 2 o'clock, I was sitting across from Marcus Webb, the branch manager who'd handled our mortgage and business accounts for the past 8 years. I need to understand my options for protecting my assets during a potential divorce, I told him. Marcus was professional and discreet, but I could see the sympathy in his eyes. Apparently, I wasn't the first person to have this conversation in his office. The good news is that most of your assets are in accounts that were established before your marriage, or with funds that can be traced to your individual income, he said, after reviewing our records. The house is joint property, but you made the down payment from your inheritance, which gives you a strong claim to the majority equity. What about the credit card debt she's accumulated? That's trickier. In Ohio, you're potentially responsible for marital debt, but if you can prove the debt was incurred without your knowledge and for non-marital purposes, like financing an affair, that would certainly strengthen your position. We spent an hour restructuring my accounts and setting up safeguards. I couldn't completely isolate myself from Tessa's financial decisions, but I could minimize my exposure and create a clear paper trail showing that I was acting responsibly while she was not. When I got home that evening, Tessa was in the kitchen making dinner. She seemed nervous, constantly checking her phone and jumping at small sounds. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling into my usual chair at the kitchen island. "Fine. Just tired. Rough day at work?" Something like that. I watched her move around the kitchen, noticing the way she avoided eye contact, the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands shook slightly as she chopped vegetables. "Tessa, have you been getting calls from credit card companies lately?" She dropped the knife. "What kind of calls?" "Collection calls, about overdue payments." She bent to pick up the knife, taking longer than necessary. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Patricia Chen from Midwest Credit Solutions called me this morning. She was looking for you." When Tessa straightened up, her face was pale. "They called you?" "Apparently, I'm listed as an emergency contact on some accounts I didn't know existed." "Ethan, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, I'm curious about something. How long have you been behind on payments?" She set the knife down and gripped the edge of the counter. "It's not that simple. There were some unexpected expenses. Unexpected expenses, like hotel rooms and restaurant bills for your dates with Dean? That's not fair." "You're right. It's not fair that I'm legally responsible for debt you accumulated while cheating on me. It's not fair that collection agencies are calling me about accounts I never authorized. And it's not fair that you've been lying to me about our financial situation while I've been working to support our family." "I was going to tell you." "When? After they started garnishing my wages? After they put a lien on our house?" Tessa's composure finally cracked completely. "I don't know, okay? I don't know when I was going to tell you. I kept thinking I could figure it out, that I could get caught up on the payments before you found out." "With what money?" "I don't know." "You don't know, but you kept spending." "It wasn't supposed to be like this. Dean said he was going to help." "Dean was going to help pay off your credit cards?" "He said once his business picked up." "Tessa, Dean's business is failing. His gym is 3 months behind on rent, and he's being sued by 2 different creditors. He can't help you pay off anything." She stared at me with something that might have been genuine surprise. "How do you know that?" "Because I looked it up. Public records, court filings, business licenses. It's all available if you know where to look." "You investigated Dean?" "I investigated our situation, all of it. The finances, the legal implications, the people involved. You know, the kind of thorough analysis that you find so annoying." Tessa sank into a chair, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely frightened. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to protect myself and our children from the consequences of your choices." "What does that mean?" "It means I've separated our finances as much as legally possible. It means I've documented your secret spending and your affair, and it means I'm filing for divorce." "Ethan, please. You wanted space to figure out what you want, Tessa. You wanted freedom to explore your options with Dean. You wanted to be with someone who doesn't overthink everything." I stood up and headed toward my office. "Congratulations. You're about to get exactly what you asked for." "You can't just abandon our marriage because I made some mistakes." "Mistakes?" I turned back to face her. "You've been having an affair for months, lying about it, financing it with secret credit cards, and planning to move in with another man. Those aren't mistakes, Tessa. That's a deliberate pattern of betrayal. I never said I was moving in with Dean. You wrote a whole document about it. New life plan, saved on our shared computer. Very detailed, very optimistic, completely unrealistic financially, but definitely comprehensive. The look on her face told me she'd forgotten about that particular piece of evidence. You read my private files? I reviewed financial documents on our shared computer while investigating fraudulent charges on accounts linked to our address. Everything I found is legally discoverable and will be included in the divorce proceedings. I left her sitting in the kitchen and went to my office to make some phone calls. The first was to Janet, to officially retain her services and begin the divorce process. The second was to Kevin, to let him know that Phase 2 was beginning ahead of schedule. "How's Tessa handling it?" he asked. "About as well as you'd expect someone to handle the consequences of their own actions." "And how are you handling it?" "Honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years. Like I've been carrying around this weight I didn't even realize was there." That's either very healthy or very concerning. Kevin, let me ask you something. If you discovered that your entire relationship was built on lies, that the person you thought you loved was actually someone completely different, wouldn't you feel relieved to stop pretending? I suppose I would. That's where I am. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. And there's something incredibly liberating about being done. After I hung up, I sat in my office and looked at the spreadsheet I'd created for Project Autumn. Most of Phase 1 was complete, and Phase 2 was already underway. The financial pressure was building, the social pressure would follow naturally, and Tessa's support system was about to discover that supporting her came with costs they hadn't anticipated. Tomorrow, I would make the phone calls that would start the social dominoes falling. By the end of the week, everyone in Tessa's orbit would know exactly what kind of person they'd been enabling, and by the end of the month, Tessa would understand the difference between making mistakes and facing consequences. I was looking forward to it. Wednesday morning brought rain and the first phase of what I'd started thinking of as the social reckoning. I'd spent Tuesday evening making a list of key conversations that needed to happen, and today I would begin having them. My first call was to Megan Walsh. "Ethan, how are you holding up?" Her voice had that carefully modulated tone people use when they think they're talking to someone fragile. "I'm doing well, actually. Better than I expected." "That's good to hear. Tessa mentioned you two are working through some challenges." "Is that what she called them? Challenges?" "Well, you know how it is. Marriage is hard work, and sometimes people need space to figure things out." "Megan, I'm curious about something. How long have you known about Tessa's relationship with Dean?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough for me to count to 10. "I'm not sure what you mean," she finally said. "I mean, how long have you known that my wife has been having an affair with Dean Pritchard?" "Ethan, I think you might be misunderstanding. I caught them together in our garage during the Halloween party. There's not much to misunderstand." Another pause. "Look, Ethan, I know you're upset, but Tessa's been going through a really difficult time. She's felt disconnected from you for months, and Dean has just been a friend who's been there to listen. A friend who she's been meeting at hotels and financing with secret credit cards. I don't know anything about credit cards, but you do know about the hotels." The silence this time was answer enough. "Megan, let me explain something to you. Tessa has accumulated over $15,000 in debt financing her affair. Debt that I'm legally responsible for as her husband. She's been using our shared resources to pay for her relationship with another man, and she's now behind on payments to the point where collection agencies are calling me. I'm sure there's an explanation. There is an explanation. The explanation is that my wife is having an affair, lying about it, and committing financial fraud in the process. And the reason I'm calling you is that I want you to understand something very clearly." "What's that?" "You've been enabling this behavior. You've been covering for her, lying for her, and helping her deceive me, which means you're partially responsible for the financial damage she's caused to our family." "Ethan, that's not fair. What's not fair is that my children are going to suffer because their mother decided to have an affair and her best friend decided to help her hide it. What's not fair is that I'm going to have to pay for hotel rooms where my wife cheated on me because you convinced her she deserved better than her marriage." "I never said she deserved better. Didn't you? Because according to several people, you've been telling everyone that Tessa's just trying to find herself and that I'm being controlling and demanding. You've been painting me as the problem in our marriage while helping her cover up her affair. I was just trying to be a supportive friend." "No, Megan. You were trying to be the star of your own drama, You wanted to be the wise friend helping the poor, trapped wife escape her boring husband. You wanted to be part of the excitement and the romance and the secret meetings. That's not true. It is true. And here's what's going to happen next. I'm filing for divorce, and during the discovery process, all of this is going to come out. The hotels, the credit cards, the lies, and the people who helped cover it up. Your name is going to be mentioned in court documents as someone who aided and abetted financial fraud. You can't do that. I can and I will, because you made a choice to get involved in this situation, and choices have consequences. I hung up before she could respond and immediately called Lana Rodriguez. The conversation followed a similar pattern, but Lana was less defensive and more calculating. I had no idea about any financial issues, she said when I explained the situation. Tessa never mentioned credit cards or debt. But you knew about Dean. I knew they were close. I didn't know it was serious. Close enough that you covered for her when she lied to me about where she was going. Ethan, I was just trying to be a good friend. If I'd known it would cause this kind of problem. You would have what? Told me the truth? I would have encouraged her to be honest with you. Would you? Or would you have just been more careful about getting caught? Lana was quiet for a moment. What do you want from me, Ethan? I want you to understand that your friendship with Tessa has costs that you didn't anticipate. And I want you to think very carefully about whether you want to continue paying those costs. What kind of costs? The kind that come with being associated with someone who's about to be publicly exposed as a liar and a cheat. The kind that come with being known as someone who helps married women deceive their husbands. The kind that come with having your name mentioned in divorce proceedings. You're threatening me. I'm informing you. There's a difference. After I hung up with Lana, I called Randy Peterson, Dean's wingman and gym buddy. Randy, this is Ethan Garvey, Tessa's husband. Oh, hey man, what's up? I wanted to talk to you about your friend Dean and his relationship with my wife. Look, dude, I don't really know what's going on between... Randy, let me save us both some time. I know about the affair. I know you've been covering for Dean, lying to his other friends about where he's been spending his time. I know you've been at the gym listening to him brag about his situation with a married woman. Man, I never... Here's what you need to understand. Dean's about to lose everything. His business, his apartment, his reputation, probably his freedom when the financial fraud charges get filed. And everyone who's been helping him is going to get dragged down with him. Financial fraud? Tessa's been using credit cards to pay for their relationship. Credit cards that are now in default, with debt that I'm legally responsible for. That makes Dean an accessory to fraud, and anyone who helped cover it up could be considered an accomplice. It was a stretch, legally speaking, but Randy didn't need to know that. I didn't know about any credit cards, but you knew he was involved with a married woman, and you helped him hide it. You lied to mutual friends, you provided alibis, you were part of the deception, which means you're part of the problem. What do you want me to do? I want you to distance yourself from Dean immediately. Stop covering for him, stop lying for him, and stop being part of his support system. Because when this all comes out, and it's going to come out, you don't want to be standing next to him. By the time I finished making my calls, it was nearly noon. I'd systematically contacted everyone in Tessa and Dean's support network and made sure they understood the real consequences of the situation they'd been enabling. Some of them, like Megan, would probably double down and become more defensive. Others, like Lana and Randy, would start distancing themselves to protect their own interests. But all of them would be talking, sharing information, and spreading the story throughout their social circles, which was exactly what I wanted. My phone started ringing around 2 o'clock. First Tessa, then Megan, then Dean himself. I let them all go to voicemail and spent the afternoon listening to increasingly frantic messages. Tessa, Ethan, what did you say to Megan? She's completely freaking out and saying something about court documents. Call me back immediately. Megan. Ethan, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was never trying to hurt your marriage. Please call me so we can clear this up. Dean. Garvey, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you need to back off. This is between you and your wife, and you need to leave other people out of it. I saved all the messages and forwarded them to Janet. Evidence of coordination and conspiracy, she called it. Proof that they were all working together to manage the situation and control the narrative. Around 6 o'clock, Kevin called. The neighborhood is buzzing, he reported. Megan's been calling everyone, trying to do damage control. She's telling people you're having some kind of breakdown and making wild accusations. What kind of wild accusations? Financial fraud? Conspiracy? Legal action? She's painting you as paranoid and vindictive. And how's that playing? Mixed reactions. Some people are buying it, but others are asking questions. Like, why would you make up something so specific? And why are Megan and Lana suddenly so defensive? What about Dean? Dean's been at the gym all day, apparently telling anyone who'll listen that you're trying to destroy his life because you can't handle the fact that your wife prefers him. That's going to age poorly. Probably. But Ethan, you should know that some people are starting to take sides. This is turning into a neighborhood drama, and not everyone is going to come down on your side. I don't need everyone on my side, Kevin. I just need the truth to come out. And then what? Then Tessa and Dean get to live with the consequences of their choices, and I get to move on with my life. That evening, Tessa came home looking like someone who'd been through a battle. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and her hands were shaking. What did you do? She demanded as soon as she walked through the door. I had some conversations with people who needed to understand the situation better. You called Megan and Lana and Randy and told them we were committing fraud. I told them the truth about our financial situation and their role in enabling your behavior. My behavior? Ethan, you're destroying our entire social circle over a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake, Tessa. Mistakes are accidental. What you've been doing is deliberate, systematic, and ongoing. Fine, I had an affair. Are you happy now? I had an affair because I was lonely and frustrated and tired of being married to someone who treats everything like a business transaction. And how did that work out for you? What do you mean? I mean, how's your affair going now that everyone knows about it? How's Dean handling the pressure? How are your friends responding to being dragged into your mess? Tessa collapsed into a chair and started crying. Not the pretty, delicate tears of someone seeking sympathy, but the ugly, desperate crying of someone who was genuinely scared. Ethan, please, I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can work through our problems. You don't have to destroy everything. I'm not destroying anything, Tessa. I'm just stopping the destruction you've been causing and making sure everyone understands what really happened. But our friends chose to enable your affair instead of encouraging you to work on our marriage. They chose to lie to me and help you deceive me. They made their choices, and now they get to live with the consequences. And what about our children? What about Emma and Jake? They're going to hear about this at school, from their friends' parents. You're humiliating them too. For the first time since this conversation started, I felt a flicker of genuine emotion. Not guilt exactly, but awareness of collateral damage. Emma and Jake are going to learn that actions have consequences, I said carefully. They're going to learn that lying and cheating and betraying people's trust leads to pain and isolation. And they're going to learn that their father isn't the kind of man who pretends everything is fine when it's not. They're going to learn that their father destroyed their family over a mistake their mother made. No, Tessa. They're going to learn that their mother destroyed their family by having an affair, and their father refused to enable her behavior or pretend it didn't happen. I left her crying in the living room and went to my office to check my email. Janet had sent me the initial divorce papers to review, along with a timeline for the next steps in the process. Phase 2 of Project Autumn was complete. Tessa's support network was fractured. Her friends were turning on each other, and the social pressure was building exactly as I'd anticipated. Phase 3 would begin tomorrow with the public revelation that would make it impossible for anyone to pretend this wasn't happening. I was looking forward to it. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after a storm has passed. I woke up feeling more focused than I had in months, ready to implement the final phase of Project Autumn. Tessa had spent the night in the guest room, and I could hear her on the phone early in the morning, her voice low and urgent, probably talking to Dean, or maybe Megan, trying to figure out how to contain the damage that was spreading through their social network like a virus. I made coffee and toast, checked my email, and reviewed the final elements of my strategy. Today would be the public revelation, the moment when everyone in our community would understand exactly what had been happening and who was responsible for it. The key was timing and audience. I needed to reach the maximum number of people simultaneously, in a way that made it impossible for Tessa and her allies to control the narrative or spin the story in their favor. Fortunately, I had the perfect venue. Our neighborhood had an active social media group, one of those community forums where people shared recommendations, complained about traffic, and organized local events. Nearly every household in the area was a member, including all the key players in this drama. I opened my laptop and began composing what would be my final communication as Tessa's husband. "Dear neighbors and friends," I began. "I'm writing to inform you of some recent developments in my personal life that may affect our community relationships and social activities." I kept the tone professional, factual, and completely devoid of emotion, just like a business communication announcing a personnel change or operational restructuring. After 12 years of marriage, Tessa and I are divorcing. This decision follows my discovery of her ongoing affair with Dean Pritchard, which has been continuing for several months, with the knowledge and assistance of several mutual friends. I included specific details about the financial fraud, the secret credit cards, and the debt that had accumulated. I mentioned the collection agencies, the legal implications, and the timeline of deception that had led to this point. I want to be clear that this is not a situation where both parties share equal responsibility. This is a situation where one party systematically betrayed their marriage vows, lied to their spouse, and committed financial fraud, while several other parties chose to enable and cover up this behavior. I name names: Megan, Lana, Randy, and Dean himself. I explained their roles in the deception, their knowledge of the affair, and their active participation in helping Tessa hide her behavior. I'm sharing this information publicly because I believe our community deserves to know the truth about the people they're trusting with their friendships, their social activities, and their personal confidences. If someone is willing to help a friend deceive their spouse, what other deceptions might they be willing to participate in? I concluded with a simple statement: effective immediately, I will no longer be participating in any social activities that include these individuals. I encourage others to make their own informed decisions about the kind of people they want in their lives. I read through the post 3 times, checking for accuracy, tone, and potential legal issues. It was factual, measured, and completely devastating. I hit post at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, when I knew most people would be checking their phones before starting their work day. Then I turned off my phone and went to work. By lunchtime, Kevin was calling my office line. "Ethan, you need to see what's happening in the neighborhood group." "I can imagine." "No, you really can't. It's complete chaos. Your post has over 200 comments and counting. People are taking sides, sharing their own stories about Tessa and Dean, and completely turning on Megan and Lana." "What kind of stories?" "Remember Sarah Mitchell from 3 streets over? She posted that Dean hit on her at a barbecue last summer while her husband was standing right there. Jennifer Adams said Megan tried to get her to cover for her own affair 2 years ago. It's like your post opened the floodgates for everyone who's had problems with these people." "And how are the main players responding?" "Tessa posted a long response calling you vindictive and claiming you're having a mental breakdown. Megan's trying to defend herself but just making things worse. Dean posted some rant about how real men handle their problems privately, but someone responded with screenshots of him bragging about the affair at the gym. Screenshots? Apparently, Randy decided to throw Dean under the bus to save himself. He posted pictures of text messages where Dean was bragging about stealing you wife and calling you a weak loser who couldn't satisfy a woman. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. That was faster than I expected. It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. Lana posted her own statement distancing herself from the whole situation and claiming she tried to talk Tessa out of the affair. Now Tessa and Megan are attacking her for being disloyal. They're turning on each other completely, and the rest of the neighborhood is watching it happen in real time. It's like a social media car crash. I spent the rest of the afternoon focused on work, letting the drama play out without my participation. The beauty of a well-executed logistics operation was that once you set the systems in motion, they ran themselves. When I got home that evening, Tessa's car was gone. So was most of her clothing, her personal items, and anything else that was clearly hers. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Ethan, I can't stay here anymore. What you did today was cruel and unnecessary. I'm staying with my sister until we can figure out how to handle this divorce civilly. The children will be staying with you for now, but we need to discuss custody arrangements that don't involve destroying each other publicly." I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I called Emma and Jake, who were both at after-school activities, and let them know I'd be picking them up and that we needed to have a family conversation. The conversation was harder than any of the strategic moves I'd made over the past week. Emma, at 16, understood more than I wished she did. Jake, at 13, was mostly confused and angry. "Why couldn't you just work it out?" Emma asked. "Other people's parents have problems and they don't destroy each other on social media." "Because other people's parents don't commit financial fraud while having affairs," I said. "And other people's parents don't lie to their children about what's really happening in their family." "But now everyone at school is going to know," Jake said. "Everyone's going to be talking about us." "Everyone was already talking about us, Jake. They were just talking behind our backs instead of to our faces. Now, at least, they're talking about the truth instead of whatever story your mother and her friends were telling." "So what happens now?" Emma asked. "Now we move forward. Your mother made choices that ended our marriage, and I made choices about how to respond to that. We all have to live with the consequences." "And what are the consequences?" I looked at my children, these two people who were the only truly innocent parties in this entire mess, and felt the weight of what I'd done. "The consequences are that our family is broken, your mother's reputation is destroyed, and we have to figure out how to build new lives from what's left." "Was it worth it?" Emma asked quietly. I thought about that question for a long time before answering. "Ask me in a year." Over the next 2 weeks, the social fallout continued exactly as I'd predicted. Tessa and Dean's relationship collapsed under the pressure of public scrutiny and financial reality. Dean's gym lost several clients who didn't want to be associated with him, and his landlord evicted him for non-payment of rent. Tessa lost most of her social media consulting clients when potential customers found her neighborhood drama in their Google searches. Megan and Lana's friendship ended in a spectacular public argument about loyalty and responsibility. Randy moved to another gym and stopped associating with Dean entirely. The divorce proceedings were swift and efficient. Janet's documentation was thorough, and Tessa's legal position was weak. I kept the house, the retirement accounts, and primary custody of the children. Tessa got her car, her personal belongings, and responsibility for the credit card debt she'd accumulated. Dean moved back in with his parents in another state. Tessa found a small apartment across town and a part-time job at a marketing firm that didn't do background checks on social media drama. I changed jobs, accepting a position with a logistics company in another city. Emma and Jake would finish the school year here, then move with me to start fresh somewhere new. On my last day in the neighborhood, Kevin came over to help me load the moving truck. "Any regrets?" he asked as we carried the last boxes out of the house. I looked back at the place where I'd lived for 8 years, where I'd thought I was building a life with someone who turned out to be a stranger. "I regret that it was necessary," I said, "but I don't regret doing it." "And Tessa?" Tessa got exactly what she wanted. Freedom from our marriage, space to figure out what she wanted, and a chance to be with someone who didn't overthink everything. The fact that it didn't turn out the way she expected isn't my problem anymore. Kevin nodded. "What about the kids?" "The kids learned that actions have consequences, that lies eventually come to light, and that their father isn't the kind of man who pretends everything is fine when it's not. Those are valuable lessons, even if they're painful ones." I climbed into the cab of the moving truck and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I could see the house where my marriage had ended and my real life had begun. Tessa had been right about one thing. I was too analytical, too focused on systems and logistics, too interested in understanding how things worked and why they failed. But she'd been wrong about thinking those were weaknesses. They were exactly the strengths I'd needed to dismantle the life she'd built on lies and construct something better from the pieces that remained. The truck pulled away from Autumn Drive, carrying me toward a future that was uncertain but honest. Behind me, the neighborhood settled back into its normal rhythm of small dramas and social complications. But they would remember this story. They would remember what happened when someone tried to play games with a man who was very, very good at logistics. And that was exactly how I wanted to be remembered.